Hello. Happy Monday. Hope everyone's had a good day. And welcome to tonight's Mary's Monday Musings. I'm super excited about the topic tonight. Oh, hi, Anne-Marie. Thanks for hopping on. I was just saying how excited I am about the topic tonight. So we'll see. Hey, Joe. So we'll, hopefully I can convey my excitement and the good news and the hope that I received from a lecture that I went to on Saturday. So I'm a member of a small writing group. There are 4 of us, Christian writers, and we get together once a month and just talk about life and about writing and about our writing journey and just a little bit of everything. And it's really a good infusion to get reconnected. And one of the women in the group had heard about this this lecture that was being done at a local church on the day that we had planned to meet. So we all decided that we were going to go to the lecture together and then meet for lunch afterwards. And boy, it was a great conversation, I'll tell you. It really was. And I'm going to wait just a minute, let a couple more people hop on, because I know I posted the wrong time initially. I was so excited. Hey, Rosemary. If you all would do me a favor, as I usually ask, if you would, if you're watching live, thank you, Andrea, so well trained. If you're watching live, if you would put live in the comments. And if you're tuning in on the replay, if you would indicate that, I would appreciate it. Just helps me keep track of what's what. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Mary Moss. I'm an author and a writer, a poet, a speaker. I live in Richmond, Virginia. And in my alter ego, I'm an admin for transportation division of an international company with an office here in Richmond. Thank you. Look, this is great. I'm glad to see people hopping on. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What I'd really like to do is just read you all 14 pages of the notes that I took on Saturday, but I won't do that. I won't do it, but it was kind of hard to condense down enough for just 15 or 20 minutes, which I promise I'll keep it to tonight. The lecture, the title of the lecture was The Soul of Shame, and that also happens to be the title of the book that Curt Thompson, who was the speaker, it's one of his books, and I will post the Amazon link to this book in the comments after the live. And he has another book called The Anatomy of the Soul, I think is the other one. And I'll post both of those. These are books that you really, I think everyone should read. This was so eye-opening for me. Hey, Janet. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it was life-changing for me. So many things in my life just kind of fell right into place, and it's going to take me weeks and months to process all of this. But I will read just a little introduction so you can understand the framework of how the seminar was kind of the direction of it, and then I'll talk about some of my musings about it. And again, it was The Soul of Shame, and it says that we're all infected with a spiritual disease. Its name is shame. Whether we realize it or not, shame affects every aspect of our life and work. It seeks to destroy our identity in Christ, replacing it with a twisted version of self that results in hiding, faking, fear, and broken relationships. But God has personally done something about our shame. He's telling a different story for our lives. And that's the good news. That's the exciting part. So I'm going to just go ahead and kind of introduce the whole concept and walk through what we learned and how I think you'll get an idea of how so many things kind of I have a new understanding and a new concept about them. I forgot to turn off all my notifications, so I hope we don't get cut off. But if we do, I'll hop right back on. So the ground zero where we start, my belief is that we're all created in God's image and likeness, and that God is beauty and goodness and joy in all things, which means we are beauty, goodness, and joy in God's eyes, because we're part of his creation. And the opposite of God is evil and darkness. And I promise you this isn't going to be real preachy, but I just want to kind of set the framework. And you can use whatever word you want, universe, higher power, whatever you want to use. I'm not threatened by that at all, because I think we all have our own understanding. That's what's so great about God, is that he's personal. But anyway, so evil, which is the opposite of God, evil and darkness. And evil uses shame to keep us from living into the life that God desires. And it's wielding shame to destroy the universe. So yes, he does love us that much. I got goosebumps. That was like the second or third sentence out of his mouth. And I was captivated from that. I could have sat and listened to this man talk for a week. He was so incredible. But that was like just so incredible to me. I'm going to say it again. Evil is wielding shame to destroy the universe and to destroy us. And let me just establish a difference that I didn't know before I attended this. The difference between shame and guilt. And guilt is not necessarily a bad thing. Guilt means I did something bad or I did something wrong. And it's how we learn. It's our conscience. It's how we learn, the difference between right and wrong and how to live in the world. Shame doesn't say I did something bad. It says I am bad. And we can get that. We don't always make that distinction. And we get the mistake of taking on shame. And it can happen at a very early age. And with shame, someone can forgive you and you don't feel any better. It takes something, even something that's redeemed and forgiven, and uses it against us. And it's not only something that interrupts our experience, but it makes us tell a different story. And that's where the power of shame comes in. And it's so subtle and sneaky that we don't realize it. And then if we tell that story that shame tells us over and over again, it becomes our truth. And he gave some really good examples. A counselor asked one of his clients, so tell me a little bit about your family of origin. And he tells the counselor, I came from a loving Christian home, grew up in a great home. And the counselor talked to him for a little bit, and then he asked him, okay, that's great. Well, who handled the discipline in your family? And, hey, Jennifer, he, after a pause, said, well, my mom did, because my dad was brutal. You see how shame can tell a different story? Shame doesn't let us tell our truth. This is not anything he did wrong, but he's ashamed. He believes a different story than what the truth is. And so he tells a different story because he doesn't want anyone to know the truth. And after a while, he doesn't even remember his own truth. And so we begin to tell stories that are not our own. And we can live our whole lives that way. So where does it come from? And it can start really early in life. It can start, for instance, you're in high school and you get a 98 on a really difficult exam, and you're so excited and you run home, and at dinner you show one of your parents, oh, look, I got a 98 on this exam. And they say, what happened to the other 2%? And it just takes the wind out of your sails. But it's probably, at that point, it's probably a repeat of conversations that you've had over and over and over again. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not enough. And most of the time, the people in authority who are giving us messages that we internalize don't mean them to be that way. They think they're being challenging or encouraging or prompting us to do better. They don't realize that we're taking that in internally as I'm not good, smart, or enough. And so over and over and over, when we experience that, that becomes our story. That becomes our truth. And pretty soon, we start telling that story through our whole life. And it impacts our jobs. Our boss gives us an assignment, and maybe it's not what he was expecting. And he takes us aside and says, this is how I would have preferred this. This is how, I'd like you to do it next time. But we're hearing that 2%, that 2%. What about that 2%? You're a loser. You're a screw up. You didn't do a good enough job. And so it goes on and on and on. And so when we have relationships, it impacts the way that we hear other people talking to us. And it impacts the way we talk to other people, because we have this shame forever in the back of our minds. And every time we hear oh, that was wonderful, or oh, that looks great, we wait for that but, don't we? But, because that's what shame has taught us over a lifetime, that there's always a but. There's always something that we can do better or be better at or in some way. So we start believing shame's version, and that's the version that allows us to hide the truth, because it covers up all of our flaws. We think. Oh, good. I'm glad to see some friends of viewers jumping on. That's great. So over time, eventually, we start living a life apart from God's beauty and goodness and joy in and for our lives. And that can be manifested in all kinds of ways, not just spiritual ways, physical ways, chronic illness, chronic pain, in any way that you can imagine, addiction of any kind, not just drugs or alcohol, but food or, risk-taking behaviors. All of that is a manifestation, probably, of this shame and the story that shame has taught us to tell. That is not the story that God wrote for us. And the scary thing about it is that evil does its best work in the midst of good deeds. So, have you ever noticed that sometimes you'll be going along, like for me, working on my book, and every once in a while I'll get to a point and I'll think, I can't write a good enough poem. I'll read something that I've written over and over again thinking, this doesn't make sense, and I'll send it off to somebody for validation, but also to make sure that I'm not just rambling, but just because I've learned, perhaps because of shame over a lifetime, that I can't write well enough, and that no matter how much someone tells me that's good, you did a good job, it's great, that will be inspirational for someone, I still struggle with that. Because I've been told the story, I've been telling my own story, shame's been telling me, you can't write a good enough story. And maybe that has manifested in your life too, in other ways. Is any of this making sense? Or did any of you have a little bit of maybe enlightenment to what could possibly be going on in your life, the way I did, the way things just kind of became really clear for me? I hope so, because it's pretty remarkable. What I liked best of all, besides the fact that I had this epiphany, this life-changing experience, was that there's good news to all of this. That's the really exciting part, not so much in the discovery. Although knowledge gives us power, doesn't it? It allows us to counter shame's story. Now that we know what shame's about, now that we know that evil's using shame against us, now we've got a fair fight. And that's the good news. So there were a couple of different things that he had us do, one of which was just really powerful for me. There were about 200 of us in the room, and he had all of us stand up and put our hands up over our heads, and then he played a piece of music, a really beautiful piece of music, and we held our hands up for about 2 minutes, and everybody, the mood in the room was just so much lighter. Everyone, I felt physically so much better at the end, and he had us do it again later, and I felt really great then. Some of the pain and things that I'd been experiencing were gone, which was really great. But there's a couple of different chemical reactions that go on in our brain, not only when we lift our hands over our head. That in and of itself is enough, but when we listen to beautiful music, or if we are at a beautiful place in nature. I can't wait to get back out on my deck in the mornings, and I'm going to try putting my arms up over my head in the mornings before I have my coffee. And it really does. It puts positive synapses start firing in positive ways in your brain. So it turns you against the negativity that shame is telling us. And then, in our daily life, how can we be empowered to counter this story? A lot of times we don't even realize that we're telling it, or we tell it so much that we don't know how to change it. So, you know how I am with my visual aids, and I don't have a 3x5 card, but we'll use this. What he said is take a 3x5 index card and a pen. That's all you need. And every time you find yourself allowing shame to tell your story, you put just a little tick on the card. Every single time. I'm not good enough. Put it down. All the self-talk, the negative self-talk that we do. Every time you're aware of yourself doing it, put a little mark on there. And just the fact that you put the mark down there and are aware of it, it starts to erase the incorrect story and starts allowing you to regain the story that God made for your life. Isn't that incredible? Once our mind knows, once we're enlightened, shame doesn't have a grip on us anymore, and we then can reclaim the life that God made for us. The beauty, the goodness, the joy. Like I said, there were 14 pages of notes. I could have stayed there for days. Those were just the very high points. If any of this was interesting to you, was enlightening to you, if you'd like more information about it, I'll post those 2 links, and you can get his books. If he writes anything like he speaks, the books are not real psychoanalytical. You don't have to be Freud to understand them. He had a great sense of humor and used himself in many of the examples, which is how you know that it's somebody who is walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So I highly recommend both of the books without even reading them, just because of the type of person that he was. So I thank you all for hopping on. Oh yes, that's right. You can also listen. You can get the Kindle version, right? Also the ebook. The I don't know, what is that called? Andrea, tell me what that's called. I don't know what it's called. Oh, on YouTube. Oh, he is on YouTube. Okay, well, Andrea is in one of my writing buddies, and she said she was going to see if she could find him on YouTube. And her comment is here. It's Curt, C-U-R-T, Thompson, M.D. And you can go find him on YouTube. You'll love him. And you can also get his books on Nook or Kindle. So, well, that is the end of my discussion for tonight. Like I said, it's definitely worth investigating more. And as always, I appreciate you all hopping on. If you know of anyone that you think would benefit from this topic, I hope you'll share this with them. Be a good friend and help a friend out. And I hope you have a good rest of the night, a great week. And hey, Hannah, hi, you hopped on right at the end, but you can catch the replay. And I will see you next Monday. If you have any comments or questions after I sign off, go ahead and just type them down there. We'll continue the discussion offline. Y'all take care, and I'll talk to you next Monday.